Watching the final season of The Expanse was like watching myself pee in a toilet, generally predicting where and how my urine is going to splash. The Expanse, for the most part, is a well-written sci-fi show that tackled interesting topics and themes, such as racism, greed, mankind's lust for power, and forcing beliefs or ideas on future generations. It has morally grey characters who are willing to use violent methods while justifying them by believing they're serving a higher purpose. Yet the show never shied away from showing their humanity, painting them as multi-layered, complex characters who have their own motives and reasons that justify what they do.
The moon just went behind the clouds to hide.
It also gave us a more or less accurate glimpse into the future of our species. But what I found to be the most interesting was the way they tackled the question, are we alone? A question humans have been asking since the dawn of mankind. It approached this topic differently than most sci-fi stories. It was mysterious, slow, captivating. It never shoved the idea in our faces to ruin the mystery. Instead, it kept on teasing us with the idea of there potentially being a highly intelligent alien life. Every time they answered one of our questions, more interesting questions would arise. The story is set in the 24th century, where humans have colonized the solar system, and Earth and Mars are on the brink of war. There is Earth, the mother of the solar system, constantly trying to avoid another war while dealing with the treachery from within. Then we have Mars, a rapidly rising military power. They work together seamlessly towards a common goal, which is turning Mars into a habitable Earth-like planet, the dream of Mars. Then we have the sad, miserable, and defeated Belters who live in the asteroid belt, hopping from one rock to another, mining asteroids for a living. They are fighters who struggle to get their very basic rights like food, water, and clean air. But in the midst of all this chaos, two great men are slowly turning the fractured belt into a rising military power. And in the center of it all, there's Detective Miller, a broken, middle-aged man who takes his job very seriously. He gets presented with the case of Julie Mao, the girl who went missing, which totally consumes him and changes him as the show goes on. On the other side of the coin, we have James Holden, a righteous boy that you want to slap from time to time, who somehow gets caught up in the Julie Mao case that leads him on the same path as Miller, where they both realized they were being played by Earth, Mars, the OPA, and something far more greater and mysterious. Leading us to the protomolecule, an interstellar substance of unknown origin, hidden in our system for eons. First, it appears to be toxic and contagious, but later on it proved to be much more than that. The protomolecule was capable of turning itself into a weapon that threatened humanity. It showed some signs of consciousness, whether activated by itself or some external power. This caused Earth, Mars, and the Belt to chase after it, believing it can be utilized to their own advantage, without fully understanding its origin, motive, or how and by whom it was sent, causing the inevitable war that was awaiting all three of them. And while the humans were scrabbling among themselves, the protomolecule used that time efficiently to reconstruct itself into a weapon or a tool that would change humanity forever. This revealed its extremely unfamiliar and bizarre nature of deconstructing everything in its path and utilizing it to achieve its goal, giving us an idea of the nature of their creators. After the protomolecule continuously refused to fit into the mold humans designed for it, they realized there was no way to fully control it, causing it to blow up in their faces, introducing a whole new era in the history of mankind. This forced humanity as a whole to shift its focus on the terrifying portals the protomolecule opened for them, not knowing whether they led to heaven or hell. Of course, driven by their curiosity, they entered the portals only to discover the sad, scary fate that met the creators of the protomolecule, providing us with both answers and even more interesting questions. It made humans think about the very distant future and wonder if they were going to meet a similar fate. And of course, humans being humans, they fight over the long-dead planet, eventually awaking it. And right when the solar system was at the brink of self-destruction and the tension at its peak, the show decides to forget about the protomolecule and pretend it never existed. Instead, it shifted its focus on the human side of the story, which in itself isn't that bad, but The Expanse was much more than that. Yes, it's about humans suffering in very harsh conditions and struggling from dirty politics, injustice, poverty, or even finding the right family, but it was also about our fear of the unknown and being alone in this vast, empty space. The protomolecule was what made the story unpredictable and exciting. Every time everything seemed to be going as planned, it would come forth and introduce more mystery, while constantly reminding us of how small we humans are. Since the very first episode of the show, when James Holden and his crew heard that eerie stress call deep in space, it made me feel that no matter how familiar, safe, and quiet space may seem, it's actually not. Whenever space felt like it was getting safe, the show would remind us that it's infinite, scary, and shrouded with mystery. The protomolecule's unpredictable nature and motive overshadowed that feeling of security until there was none left, which made the universe seem like a very dangerous, unpredictable place. However, since the beginning of season 5, it's as if the show got Alzheimer or something. It didn't only forget about the protomolecule, but it also suddenly forgot that these two important men even existed. The writers were clearly building up the protomolecule plotline into something great and perhaps very dangerous. To fill 3 with unrelated side stories. The only time the show refers to the protomolecule is by mentioning the entities, which was something I was willing to chew and swallow since it's the only protomolecule related thing I'm ever likely to get. It was the only thing in the season that could have had the chance to suddenly change the course of the war and make it much more enticing. But instead, they used the entities, which are supposed to be this great thing that wiped out the creators of the protomolecule genre. However, in the end, I can't help but think that they did the show injustice by completely neglecting the protomolecule story. I think the show lost its charm when Miller died.